Hello and welcome to the Daily Aus. I'm Billi FitzSimons.
I'm Sam Koslowski.
Over the past week, you might have seen some commentary around sunscreens online. This is all because of some research consumer advocacy group Choice did, where it did some testing on 20 different sunscreens to check if their claimed SPF matches their actual SPF. The results indicated that many sunscreens allegedly don't deliver on their SPF rating. But are those results accurate? It's led to a lot of back and forth with one brand in particular that we are going to explain today. Before we get into today's deep dive, I just wanted to say a quick hello to everyone watching us on YouTube and to say that we actually have a specific goal for how many subscribers we want before the end of the month. We are hoping for 20,000 subscribers. So if you can press subscribe and help us get there, we would be so appreciative. Now, on to the deep dive.
Billi, there are always stories working in the Daily Aus newsroom that I think are going to do unbelievably well in terms of the engagement with the audience, and then they don't. And then there are others that I don't really pick to be heavy hitters, but really take off. And this story goes into category B.
Yep.
The reaction from the audience and the number of people who sent this post when we put it on Instagram to a friend was in the tens of thousands. But take me back to where this story originates.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense that it did so well because it's something that impacts us all every day. If you're someone who applies sunscreen every day, which I'm sure you are, Sam.
Of course. And you're right. And I should have picked that this would be a heavy hitter. But we're here. Everyone makes mistakes.
Okay, so the origins of this story. So last week, the consumer group Choice released a new study that looked into the levels of SPF on sunscreen brands in Australia. And specifically, they were looking at what is the advertised SPF on different sunscreen bottles.
So like 50 plus or that kind of thing.
And then comparing that to what is the actual SPF when they do their own independent research into those sunscreen bottles.
Take me through what Choice is. You've said that a couple of times.
Yeah, so they are a consumer watchdog. They're Australia's leading consumer advocacy group, but they're not a government body. They are a not-for-profit organisation. And so their whole aim is to advocate for and also protect Australian consumers. And they do that by trying to hold different industries and companies to account. One thing that they are quite famous for that we report on every year at the Daily Aus is the Shonky Awards.
The Shonkies.
Do you know them?
Love the Shonkies.
So they are kind of like this mock awards ceremony where they recognize that year the companies or the products that they perceive to be the worst ones of that year. So one year, for example, I think it was about 2 years ago when the cost of living crisis was well and truly the biggest story of the year, and they gave the Shonky Award to Coles and Woolworths because they said that those supermarket brands were profiting off this cost of living crisis.
And other times they've done products that you'd see on infomercials that say that if you use this mechanical bike that you can pedal under your work desk, you're going to lose 40 kilos and all that kind of stuff. But Choice does a lot of really interesting work as well. I mean, I use them, for example, when I'm looking for a new vacuum to buy or a coffee machine, and the impartiality of their reviews and the way in which their reviews are perceived by the market. And you often see little stickers on products in stores saying reviewed as the #1 kettle by Choice magazine.
Yes. So I think all this to say that Choice is a very well-respected Australian consumer organisation.
Yep, they've been around for a while, and this is not the first Choice investigation that has made headlines.
Definitely not.
Before we go on to this story, this is all about SPF, this quality in sunscreen that the bottle says how much of it is in it. And now that I actually stop and think about it, I don't really know what exactly that is. Can you talk me through why I care that there's 50 plus or 30 plus or whatever the number is?
Yeah, so SPF stands for Sun Protection Factor. I feel like that is a typical trivia question.
That's fantastic.
If you are a trivia fan, I feel like that will absolutely come up one day. What does SPF stand for? And now you'll know that the answer is Sun Protection Factor. Now, SPF is measuring how much it protects your skin from sunburn. So when sunscreen is marked SPF.30, that means it can increase your skin's sunburn threshold. Technically what it means is, say it takes about 5 minutes for your skin to burn. SPF.30 means that it will take 30 times longer than that to burn. So you've got 30 times longer to not burn. Does that make sense?
Okay, so if it's an SPF 40 or 50, the length of time that you're out in the sun gets longer.
Yes. And another way to look at it is that SPF 30 shields skin from about 97% of the sun's UVB rays, which is what all sunscreen is protecting from. And then SPF 50 is protecting from about 98%. No sunscreen that has ever been created can protect your skin from 100% of the sun's rays.
And I'm sure there are actual chemical guidelines to what makes something SPF 30 or 50.
Yes. I will also say that these SPF ratings are applicable in like a perfectly controlled lab.
Yeah.
But in reality, when the everyday person is using them, they might not apply a thick enough layer. It might be too thin. They might not reapply it. So
they might go for a swim before their parents tell them to wait after they put on sunscreen.
Sounds like that's happened to you before, Sam.
I'm getting some skeletons out of the closet here. It's good.
All of that to say, I guess it doesn't end up protecting you to the exact amount on the bottle, and it is also a good reminder to always apply a thick layer and to often reapply, especially after a swim.
So there are these legal and medical almost categorizations of sunscreen based on their protection qualities from the sun. And Choice decided to look into these SPF ratings of some of Australia's most well-known sunscreens. What exactly did they find then?
Okay, so they tested 20 sunscreens, all of which claimed to have an SPF rating of 50 or more, 50 plus. And they did that through an independent lab in Australia. So this wasn't the people at Choice doing these tests, it was an independent lab. Of those 20, only 4 actually matched their SPF claims. And those sunscreens were by the brands Cancer Council Kids, although it was just one of their sunscreens that passed the test. Some of their other ones were found to have lower SPF ratings than were claimed. There was also La Roche-Posay, Mecca Cosmetica, and also Neutrogena, although again, it was only one of their products. Another one did not meet the SPF claims. But again, there were only 4 of the 20 sunscreens tested that kind of passed this test. I'm not going to go through all the different sunscreens and the results because I imagine that would be quite a boring podcast. But I will add a link to Choice's findings in the show notes if anyone does want to go have a look at the specific products.
Okay, so basically there are sunscreen brands that say they contain a certain amount of the SPF qualities that upon further investigation might not. But there's one brand that is causing a bit more controversy, right?
Hi, I'm Zara. I'm the co-founder of the Daily Aus, and we started this company because we think news can be done differently. If you agree, you can hit subscribe. It's the best way to help us grow. Now, back to the video.
Yes, so the sunscreen with the worst rating once it was tested in this research was Ultraviolet's Lean Screen SPF 50 Plus Mineral Mattifying Zinc Skin Screen. Now, that product, Choice said, returned an SPF of 4. So the product says that it provides SPF protection of 50 plus, but Choice is saying that it actually only provides an SPF protection of 4. Now, Choice said that when they got these results back, they were so surprised by that result, specifically from Ultraviolet. So they decided to send a different batch of the Ultraviolet sunscreen to a different lab in Germany. And those results, they said, it came back with an SPF of 5, which they said pretty much matched what they initially did find.
Okay, so Billi, I imagine Ultraviolet was not pleased with this declaration from Choice that there was an astoundingly low level of SPF in their sunscreen products.
Yeah, I think that is an understatement to say that they were not pleased. They completely rejected these findings from Choice. So they said that if this product was applied sufficiently, then a testing result of SPF 4 is scientifically impossible. That is their words. Now, they put out a statement. They've also put out a video. Their statement was quite lengthy. And again, if you want to read it in full, the link to this will be in the show notes. But I'll read out some of what they said. They said, Lean Screen has been on the market for 5 years in 29 countries, and we have not received a single substantiated claim of sunburn during use, reinforcing our confidence in the testing we have. If the Choice results were at all feasible, we would have had hundreds of cases of reported sunburn and skin damage while using this product in real-life situations.
So categorically denying these findings.
Yes. Now, adding to this statement, one of the founders of Ultraviolet, Ava Chandler Matthews, also put out an 8-minute video explaining their thoughts on this. And one thing that I thought was interesting in explaining how this could have happened is the decanting process. Here's what she said.
Obviously, I've seen all of the press about the choice testing, and I guess I just wanted to give you a bit of an understanding of what's happened, how this could happen, why we're disputing these claims. I guess my concern with this whole thing is that people now no longer trust any sunscreen. It's not just about us. It's just about, knowing that the consumer can trust the sunscreens that they're wearing.
That's an interesting point that she's raised. How did Choice respond, particularly about that decanting point?
So after all this happened, Choice basically doubled down on the testing that they did.
Right.
And on Monday this week, they released the details of all of its lab tests. And that decanting point, they confirmed that they did that to ensure that this was blind testing, so to remove any bias in the research process.
So all of the investigators couldn't see the bottle that the sunscreen was in. They could just see sunscreen A, sunscreen B. Got it.
So the Choice CEO, Ashley De Silva, said to facilitate blind testing, all 20 sunscreen products were decanted into amber glass jars, sealed, labelled and transported in accordance with strict instructions. The CEO also went on to say that clearly there is discrepancy here between their research, Choice's research, and that of Ultraviolet's. And so they said that they believe that this discrepancy should warrant further investigation by the TGA, which is the regulator for all medicines and medical devices in Australia.
And that's a good point. The Therapeutics Goods Administration, they're the ones who actually are empowered by Australian law to make sure that it's not just a finding from an investigation from a publisher and a product reviewer, but a promise to Australians that what they're buying on the shelf is actually the product it says it is.
Exactly. And that was also part of Ultraviolet's defense. They were saying that Choice isn't the regulator in this space. That is the TGA. And they say that they have always complied with any regulations that TGA has imposed.
Sure.
Now, the TGA has also entered this chat. They released a statement last week acknowledging inconsistencies in SPF testing, and they noted that testing on humans can be highly subjective. Now, they have said that they will investigate Choice's findings further. So I guess now we will just wait and see what happens there.
Billi, as a final question, I'm really interested to get your take on whether this story means that we should be trusting sunscreen at all. And let's have that discussion before we wrap up, because it's a really important one to have. It's not just Ultraviolet that had this results finding. It was the overwhelming majority of sunscreens on the shelf. How do you want me, as somebody listening to this podcast, to be thinking about sunscreen right now?
As someone who applies sunscreen every day.
And waits before we go swimming
yes.
to let it sink in.
So Choice did address this. They said, if you are using one of these sunscreens in our testing, you should continue to do so. So they're saying even the ones that came back as not having the SPF rating that they claim to, or allegedly not having the SPF rating that they claim to, that you shouldn't just throw it out. You should still keep it. I think ultimately with this, the TGA is, like we said, going to investigate it.
Yeah.
And if that results in more transparency around the testing process for sunscreen, that probably can only be a good thing.
Well, it will likely lead to a higher quality product in some cases, which is good for Australians. I mean, skin cancer is one of the biggest threats to Australian lives, and it's really important, I think, for journalism when covering this story to ensure that it doesn't send a signal to people that sunscreen is not to be believed and sunscreen is not to be used.
Definitely.
And that's what Choice said, that this is still an important part of what is for many Australians a daily ritual. But there's some transparency and accountability steps that we can all take to ensure that it's doing exactly what it says it would.
I think that sums it up perfectly.
Thank you so much, Billi, and thank you for listening to this podcast. We've thrown those links to the Choice investigation and the full response from Ultraviolet in today's show notes. We're going to be back in your headphones with the headlines in the afternoon. Until then, have a great day.